Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Key concepts in intersectional discourse analysis. Intersectional discourse analysis delves into the complexities of how various social identities, such as race, gender, class, and sexuality, intersect within communicative practices to form patterns of power and resistance. Originating from Kimberlé Crenshaw's legal scholarship, intersectionality has broadened to encompass a dynamic framework that recognizes the multifaceted nature of identity and its implications in societal structures. This approach is pivotal in analyzing how discourses shape and are shaped by the interconnected systems of oppression and privilege, providing critical insights into the subtle dynamics of societal interaction. In this exploration, we will discuss the core principles of intersectionality, emphasizing its application in discourse analysis, and highlight its crucial role in understanding and addressing issues of social inequality. By examining key concepts such as complexity of identities, intersecting systems of oppression, and power dynamics, this introduction sets the stage for a comprehensive analysis of how intersectional factors influence discourse and communication across various social settings. 1. Intersectionality. Intersectionality is a foundational concept in discourse analysis that focuses on understanding how various aspects of a person's social and political identities, such as gender, race, class, sexuality, and disability, intersect to create unique experiences of discrimination and privilege. Originating from the legal scholarship of Kimberlé Crenshaw, this concept has expanded beyond its initial focus on race and gender to encompass a broader range of identities and issues, providing a more nuanced framework for analyzing social inequality and power dynamics. 1. Core principles of intersectionality in discourse analysis. Point 1. Complexity of identities. Multidimensionality recognizes that individuals possess multiple, layered identities that interact in complex ways, influencing their social experiences and power positions. Beyond additive models. Moves beyond additive or simplistic models of oppression, e.g., race plus gender plus class, to understand how intersecting identities create unique experiences that cannot be fully understood by examining components separately. Point 2. Intersecting systems of oppression. Matrix of domination, a term coined by Patricia Hill Collins that describes the interlocking nature of social hierarchies, where race, class, gender, and other identity markers do not exist independently but are woven together into a single, overarching structure of oppression. Simultaneity of influence emphasizes that different dimensions of identity, e.g., race, gender, disability, are not merely intersecting paths but are simultaneously influencing and shaping each individual's experience. Point 3. Power dynamics and social context. Social and political contexts analyzes how the social and political contexts shape and are shaped by the intersections of identities, recognizing that these contexts influence the enforcement and experience of power. Visibility and voice focuses on how intersectionality influences who gets to speak and be heard in societal discourses, often highlighting the voices of those marginalized across multiple dimensions. 2. Applying intersectionality in discourse analysis. Methodological implications. Inclusive sampling ensures that the diversity of voices and perspectives, especially those from marginalized intersections, are included in the study. Thematic analysis employs thematic analysis to discern how intersecting identities influence discourse themes and the representation of subjects. Critical lens utilizes a critical lens to examine texts and talk, looking for how language constructs, maintains, or challenges intersecting oppressions. Case study application. For example, in analyzing media representations of protests, an intersectional approach would look at how different protesters, based on race, gender, class, etc., are portrayed, what narratives are promoted, and how these narratives serve broader social and political agendas. Intersectionality is crucial for a comprehensive understanding of how discourse is both produced and interpreted within the frameworks of complex social identities and power structures. By applying an intersectional lens, discourse analysts can uncover deeper insights into how societal narratives are constructed and the implications these have for individuals who navigate multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination or privilege. This approach not only enriches the analysis of discourse but also fosters a greater understanding and appreciation for the diversity and complexity of human experiences in social interactions and cultural representations. 2. Identity and power. The concepts of identity and power are integral to understanding the dynamics of intersectional discourse analysis. Identity refers to the various social categories and characteristics that define individuals and groups, such as race, gender, class, sexuality, and disability. Power, on the other hand, pertains to the ability to influence others and control resources, often manifesting through language and discourse. Together, these concepts help analyze how discourse both shapes and is shaped by the power dynamics among various identity groups. 1. Core principles of identity and power in discourse analysis. Point 1. Constructed nature of identity. Social construction. Identity is not innate or fixed but is constructed through social interactions and cultural contexts. Discourse plays a critical role in this construction by naming and categorizing identities, thus imbuing them with social significance and power. Performativity. Drawing from Judith Butler's theory, identity is performed through discourse and practices. These performances are iterative and can both reinforce and challenge existing identity norms. Point 2. Power relations in discourse. Discursive power. Discourse is a mechanism through which power is exercised. The ability to control discourse, what can be said and who can speak, reflects and reinforces power structures. Hegemony. The concept of hegemony, as developed by Antonio Gramsci, illustrates how dominant groups maintain their power through cultural and ideological means, shaping what is considered common sense or natural in society. Point 3. Intersection of identity and power. Intersectional marginalization and privilege. Different identities intersect to create unique configurations of privilege and marginalization. Intersectional discourse analysis examines how these configurations are reflected in and perpetuated by discourse. Resistance and agency. Discourse is not only about maintaining power but also about resisting it. Marginalized groups use discourse to assert agency, challenge hegemonic norms, and negotiate their identities. 2. Applying identity and power in discourse analysis. Methodological implications. Discourse as data. Use texts, media, and spoken language as primary data sources to examine how identities are constructed and contested. Power dynamics analysis. Analyze how certain discourses privilege or marginalize different identities, paying close attention to who controls the discourse and whose voices are silenced or marginalized. Contextual sensitivity. Contextualize discourse within specific social, historical, and political contexts to understand how power relations are embedded and operationalized. Case study application. For instance, in analyzing political speeches, one might examine how the language used by politicians constructs racial identities, invokes gender norms, or appeals to class sentiments, and how these constructions serve to mobilize, divide, or empower different segments of the population. The interplay between identity and power in discourse is a central theme in intersectional discourse analysis. By examining how identities are constructed, reinforced, and contested through discourse, and how these processes are intertwined with power dynamics, researchers can gain a deeper understanding of the complex ways in which society operates and evolves. This approach not only provides insights into the structural aspects of power and identity but also highlights the potential for discourse to be a site of resistance and change, empowering marginalized groups to redefine their identities and claim their space in the social narrative. 3. Marginality and voice. The concepts of marginality and voice are critical in intersectional discourse analysis, focusing on the dynamics of how marginalized voices are represented, heard, or silenced within various forms of discourse. Marginality refers to the social, political, and economic exclusion or relegation of certain groups based on identity factors like race, gender, class, sexuality, and disability. Voice, in this context, pertains to the capacity of these groups to express themselves and be acknowledged in societal narratives and decision-making processes. 1. Core principles of marginality and voice in discourse analysis. Point 1. Representation and exclusion. Visibility versus invisibility. Analyze how certain groups are made visible or invisible in discourse. Visibility does not merely mean presence but also the quality and context of that presence, whether it is stereotypical, multifaceted, or authentic. Mechanisms of silencing. Examine the mechanisms through which marginal voices are silenced or marginalized in discourse, such as omission, stereotyping, and trivialization. Point 2. Dynamics of voice. Voice as agency. Voice is not just about speaking but also about being heard and having one's speech act affect change. Analyze how effectively marginalized groups can assert their agency through discourse. Narrative authority. Consider who has the authority to narrate stories. Whose narratives are legitimized in public discourse, and whose are questioned or undermined. 3. Intersectional perspectives on voice. Compounded marginality. Understand how various aspects of identity intersect to compound experiences of marginality and affect the ability to have one's voice heard. Diverse voices within groups. Recognize the heterogeneity within marginalized groups, ensuring that the diversity of voices within each group is acknowledged and represented. 2. Applying marginality and voice in discourse analysis. Methodological implications. Qualitative textual analysis. Employ qualitative methods to delve deep into the content and context of texts, exploring how marginalized identities are portrayed or engaged with. Counter-narrative strategies. Use counter-narratives as a method to bring forward and empower the voices of marginalized groups, challenging dominant narratives and offering alternative perspectives. Participatory approaches. Incorporate the perspectives and voices of marginalized individuals in the research process itself, allowing them to guide and inform the analysis. Case study application. For example, in analyzing media coverage of LGBTQ+ issues, one could examine not only how frequently these groups are mentioned but also the contexts in which they appear. Are they depicted as full agents with complex identities, or are they reduced to stereotypes or victims? The exploration of marginality and voice within intersectional discourse analysis provides a powerful lens through which to understand and challenge the ways in which societal discourses and constrain the experiences of marginalized groups. By focusing on how these groups are represented or silenced, and how they navigate and resist these conditions, this approach offers profound insights into the mechanisms of social exclusion and the potential for discourse to serve as a vehicle for social change and empowerment. This analysis not only highlights the struggles and resilience of marginalized groups but also calls for a more inclusive and equitable approach to understanding and engaging with diverse voices in society. 4. Hybridity and fluidity. The concepts of hybridity and fluidity are crucial in intersectional discourse analysis, particularly in understanding the evolving and often complex nature of identity as expressed through discourse practices. Hybridity refers to the mixture or blending of cultural and identity markers that result from cross-cultural exchanges, while fluidity emphasizes the changeable and non-static nature of identity, suggesting that identity is not fixed but continually shaped and reshaped through interaction and discourse. 1. Core principles of hybridity and fluidity in discourse analysis. Point 1. Hybrid identities, cultural intersections. Hybridity involves the intersection of multiple cultural and identity dimensions, leading to new, hybrid forms that transcend traditional boundaries. This can be seen in language use, cultural practices, and identity expressions that combine elements from diverse origins. Resistance and innovation. Hybrid identities often emerge as a form of resistance to dominant cultural narratives and as innovative ways for individuals to navigate complex social landscapes. Point 2. Fluidity of identity. Continual negotiation. Identity fluidity highlights that identities are not fixed or inherent but are continually negotiated and renegotiated through discourse. This includes how individuals present themselves in different contexts and how they may shift aspects of their identity in response to social dynamics. Contextual and temporal variability. identity can vary significantly depending on the social, political, and cultural context, as well as over time. Discourse analysis focusing on fluidity explores how these changes occur and what influences them. Point 3. Discursive construction of identity. Role of language. Language is a key tool in the construction and deconstruction of identities. Analyzing discourse practices helps reveal how language is used to both assert and blur identity boundaries. Performativity. Building on Judith Butler's concept of performativity, this aspect examines how identity is performed and enacted through discourse, highlighting that what we say and how we say it performs and constitutes our identity. 2. Applying hybridity and fluidity in discourse analysis. Methodological implications. Discourse tracking. Track changes in discourse over time to observe how identities evolve and respond to shifting cultural and social influences. Interdisciplinary approaches. Incorporate insights from cultural studies, linguistics, sociology, and anthropology to enrich the analysis of hybridity and fluidity in identity construction. Narrative analysis. Use narrative analysis to understand individual stories and testimonies that reflect hybrid and fluid identities, emphasizing personal experiences and self-expression. Case study application. For example, in studying online forums for diaspora communities, one might analyze how members negotiate their cultural identities, often blending elements from their country of origin with those of the host country, and how these identities shift in response to current events or changes in their personal lives. Hybridity and fluidity are essential concepts in intersectional discourse analysis, providing a nuanced understanding of how identities are not merely intersected but are also dynamic and continually evolving. By focusing on how identities are discursively constructed and constantly reshaped, this approach highlights the complexities of living at the intersections of multiple identity markers. It challenges static or essentialist views of identity, promoting a more fluid understanding that accommodates the realities of modern, interconnected lives. This analytical perspective not only enriches academic discourse but also offers practical insights into the lived experiences of individuals navigating multiple cultural and identity landscapes. 5. Discursive practices. Discursive practices encompass the ways in which language and communication are used to enforce or challenge social hierarchies and inequalities. This concept is central to intersectional discourse analysis as it explores the role of language in shaping social realities, constructing identities, and maintaining or disrupting power structures. By examining discursive practices, researchers can uncover the subtle and overt ways that language contributes to social stratification and the perpetuation or resistance of systemic inequalities. 1. Core principles of discursive practices in discourse analysis. Point 1. Language as a tool of power. Power through language. Language is not merely a medium of communication but a means of exerting and negotiating power. It can be used to dominate, marginalize, stereotype, or grant legitimacy and authority to certain groups or ideas. Institutional language. The language used in institutions, e.g., legal, educational, medical, often reflects and sustains the power dynamics inherent within these structures, potentially reinforcing social hierarchies. Point 2. Construction and contestation of meanings. Social construction of reality. Discourse constructs social realities and shapes our perception of the world. This includes the construction of social categories like race, gender, and class, which are not biologically inherent but are socially produced and maintained through language. Contestation and resistance. Discursive practices are also sites of resistance where marginalized groups can challenge and redefine dominant narratives, using language to contest the meanings imposed on them by more powerful groups. Point 3. Intersectionality in discursive practices. Intersecting discourses. Analyze how different discourses, around race, gender, sexuality, and class, intersect and interact within specific contexts to create complex layers of meaning and influence. Multiple identities and experiences. Understand how individuals navigate and articulate their multiple identities within various discursive contexts, highlighting the fluidity and multiplicity of identity as expressed through discourse. 2. Applying discursive practices in intersectional analysis. Methodological implications. Critical linguistic analysis. Employ methods from critical linguistics to analyze how language structures, e.g., grammar, vocabulary, syntax, and language uses, e.g., speech acts, narratives, reflect and reproduce power dynamics. Contextual analysis. Place discursive events within their broader socio-political and historical contexts to understand how and why certain discursive practices are employed and what they signify in those specific contexts. Multimodal discourse analysis. Extend the analysis beyond spoken or written text to include other modes of communication such as visual media, body language, and digital communication, which can also enforce or challenge social hierarchies. Case study application. For example, analyzing political rhetoric in election campaigns can reveal how candidates use language to construct and appeal to identity markers like race, class, and gender. Examining these discourses can show how political power is sought through the mobilization of certain identities and the marginalization or silencing of others. Discursive practices are fundamental to intersectional discourse analysis as they provide the means to explore how language functions as a powerful tool in the construction, perpetuation, and contestation of social hierarchies and inequalities. By focusing on the ways language is used across different contexts and identities, this approach reveals the dynamics of power that operate within society, offering insights into how these dynamics can be challenged and changed through discursive interventions. This framework not only deepens our understanding of language's role in social life but also empowers marginalized voices by highlighting the potential for discourse to serve as a site of resistance and transformation. 6. Context and situatedness. The concepts of context and situatedness are central to intersectional discourse analysis, emphasizing how the specific setting or context in which communication occurs significantly influences the discourse and vice versa. This approach recognizes that discourse does not happen in a vacuum but is deeply embedded within specific social, cultural, historical, and political contexts that shape and are shaped by the way communication unfolds. 1. Core principles of context and situatedness in discourse analysis. Point 1. Contextual influence on discourse. Social and cultural contexts. Every act of communication is influenced by the norms, values, and beliefs of the society in which it occurs. These cultural and social frameworks provide the backdrop against which discourse is interpreted and understood. Historical context. The historical background of a specific discourse event helps to explain why certain themes, language styles, or narratives emerge. Historical context is crucial for understanding shifts in discourse over time, especially in relation to social movements or historical events. Point 2. Discourse's influence on context. Discourse shaping reality. Discourse not only reflects but also shapes social realities. By framing issues in specific ways, discourse can influence public perception, affect policy decisions, and shift societal norms. Power dynamics. Discourses embedded in different contexts can reinforce or challenge existing power structures. Understanding the situational aspects of communication helps to reveal how power is negotiated and contested in various settings. Point 3. Situational variability, flexibility and adaptation. Discourse practices often adapt to suit different situational demands, reflecting the flexible nature of communication. For example, the way an issue is discussed can vary significantly between public and private settings, formal and informal interactions, or written and spoken communications. Role of the audience. The audience's expectations and the relationship between communicators play a critical role in shaping how discourse unfolds. Audience design. The process of shaping discourse based on the anticipated or actual audience illustrates how discourse is tailored to fit specific situational needs. 2. Applying context and situatedness in intersectional analysis. Methodological implications. Ethnographic approaches. Use ethnographic methods to deeply understand the contextual and situational factors influencing discourse. This involves participant observation, interviews, and engagement with community practices. Comparative analysis. Compare how similar themes or issues are discussed in different contexts to understand how situational factors influence discourse. Interdisciplinary insights. Draw on insights from sociology, anthropology, history, and cultural studies to enrich the analysis of context and its influence on discourse. Case study application. Analyzing healthcare communication might involve examining how doctor-patient interactions differ based on various contextual factors such as cultural backgrounds, socioeconomic status, or the specific healthcare settings, e.g., emergency versus routine checkup. This analysis can reveal how intersectional identities, race, gender, class, etc., influence and are influenced by medical discourse. Understanding the concepts of context and situatedness is fundamental to intersectional discourse analysis, as they provide a comprehensive framework for examining how discourse is both a product and a producer of its environment. By focusing on the situational aspects of communication, researchers can uncover the complex interplay between language, identity, and power within specific contexts. This approach highlights the dynamic nature of discourse and its capacity to influence and reshape social landscapes, offering deeper insights into how intersectional identities are constructed, negotiated, and understood across different settings. 7. Agency and resistance. Agency and resistance are pivotal concepts in intersectional discourse analysis, focusing on how individuals and groups use language and discourse to actively resist, subvert, or renegotiate their positions within social hierarchies. These concepts are integral to understanding the dynamic nature of power and identity as they unfold through discourse. They highlight not only how people are subjected to various forms of power and oppression but also how they actively engage with and challenge these forces. 1. Core principles of agency and resistance in discourse analysis. Point 1. Agency in discourse. Active participation. Agency refers to the capacity of individuals to act independently and make their own free choices. In the context of discourse, it involves how individuals use language to assert themselves, shape their identities, and influence others within their social environments. Language as empowerment. Analyzing discourse for signs of agency involves looking at how marginalized individuals or groups use language creatively to claim space, articulate their experiences, and assert their rights. Point 2. Forms of resistance. Overt and covert resistance. Resistance through discourse can be overt, such as public protests or outspoken criticism against oppressive practices. It can also be covert, where resistance is subtle and may involve irony, humor, or coded language that subverts dominant narratives. Counter-narratives. One of the key strategies of resistance in discourse is the creation and promotion of counter-narratives that challenge dominant or mainstream stories and perspectives, providing alternative viewpoints that validate the experiences and identities of marginalized groups. Point 3. Renegotiation of social positions. Discursive negotiation. This involves how individuals or groups engage in discourse to negotiate or renegotiate their positions within social structures. It includes how they might challenge stereotypes, refute imposed identities, or reshape the perceptions others have of them. Transformative discourse. Focus on how discourse is used not just to resist oppression but to transform social relations and structures, advocating for broader social change and justice. 2. Applying agency and resistance in intersectional analysis. Methodological implications. Narrative analysis. Explore personal narratives and stories to uncover how individuals express agency and enact resistance. This includes analyzing life histories, autobiographies, or interviews where people discuss their experiences and strategies of resistance. Discourse strategies analysis. Identify specific linguistic and rhetorical strategies used to resist or subvert dominant power structures. This could include analyzing speech acts, language choices, or narrative structures that serve to undermine or challenge oppressive narratives. Contextual analysis. Examine the broader social, cultural, and political contexts that shape and are shaped by acts of resistance. Understanding the context is crucial to appreciating the significance and impact of discourse-based resistance. Case study application. For instance, analyzing social media campaigns around #MeToo could reveal how women and other marginalized groups use digital platforms to articulate their experiences of sexual harassment, challenge systemic sexism, and demand change. The analysis would explore how the discourse around #MeToo acts as a form of resistance and a tool for renegotiating social relations concerning gender and power. Agency and resistance are foundational to understanding how discourse operates within power structures in intersectional discourse analysis. By examining how individuals and groups use discourse to resist oppression and reshape their social realities, this approach highlights the active and dynamic roles that language plays in the struggle for social justice. It underscores the capacity of marginalized voices to not only challenge but also change the narrative landscapes in which they live, thereby reshaping the structures of power that define them. 8. Praxis. Praxis in intersectional discourse analysis embodies the crucial connection between theory and practice, emphasizing how theoretical insights can be applied to facilitate social change and address issues of social justice. This concept underscores the importance of not only understanding discourse as a site of power dynamics but also using this understanding to engage in transformative actions that can reshape societal structures and norms. 1. Core principles of praxis in discourse analysis. Point 1. Theory to action. Application of theoretical insights. Praxis involves the translation of theoretical concepts from intersectional discourse analysis into practical actions or interventions that address real-world inequalities and injustices. Critical engagement. This process requires a critical engagement with discourse that not only deconstructs existing power relations but also proposes and enacts strategies for change. 2. Advocacy and empowerment. Empowering marginalized voices. One of the key aspects of praxis is the focus on amplifying the voices and experiences of marginalized groups. This includes providing platforms for these voices and supporting their participation in discourse spaces traditionally dominated by more powerful groups. Advocacy for change. Praxis in discourse analysis also involves advocacy work, where findings and insights are used to influence policy, shape public opinion, and mobilize communities towards social justice goals. Point 3. Reflexive practice. Ongoing reflexivity. Praxis requires researchers and practitioners to continuously reflect on their methods, biases, and the impacts of their work. This reflexivity ensures that their practices remain aligned with the ethical pursuit of equality and justice. Collaboration with communities. Engaging with the communities being studied is essential, allowing for a co-constructive approach where knowledge and actions are developed collaboratively, ensuring relevance and respectfulness. 2. Applying praxis in intersectional analysis. Methodological implications. Action research. Incorporate methodologies like action research that involve participants in the research process, focusing on collective problem-solving and implementing change. Policy impact. Use discourse analysis to inform policy-making, ensuring that policies are grounded in an understanding of how discourse shapes and reflects social realities. Public engagement. Engage the public through workshops, seminars, and discussions that disseminate research findings and explore their implications for societal change. Case study application. An example could be a project analyzing the discourse around immigration policy. Findings from this analysis could be used to develop more inclusive, fair policy recommendations. Workshops could be held with policymakers, community leaders, and affected individuals to discuss findings and explore actionable changes. Praxis in intersectional discourse analysis bridges the gap between theoretical exploration and tangible change, focusing on how the insights gained through analysis of discourses can be effectively used to challenge and transform social injustices. This approach not only enhances the relevance of discourse analysis in addressing real-world issues but also strengthens its role in advocating for and implementing social justice. By emphasizing praxis, intersectional discourse analysis commits to not just understanding the world but actively participating in its transformation. Conclusion. Intersectional discourse analysis provides a powerful lens through which to view and dissect the complexities of identity and power within communicative practices. By integrating the foundational principles of intersectionality, this analytical approach offers profound insights into how various forms of identity and power intersect and manifest in discourse. It challenges simplistic understandings of identity and pushes for a more nuanced recognition of how systemic oppressions and privileges are interwoven within societal narratives. The application of intersectional principles to discourse analysis not only enriches academic and practical understandings of social interactions but also underscores the importance of a nuanced approach in advocating for social justice and equity. By continuing to explore and engage with these concepts, researchers and practitioners can contribute to more inclusive and effective communication strategies that reflect the diverse realities of society. Frequently asked questions. What is intersectionality in discourse analysis? Intersectionality in discourse analysis is a framework for understanding how various aspects of people's social and political identities, such as race, gender, class, sexuality, and disability, intersect, influencing unique experiences of discrimination and privilege. How does intersectionality improve discourse analysis? Intersectionality enriches discourse analysis by providing a nuanced approach to understanding social inequalities and power dynamics. It helps in examining how identities and systems of oppression, such as racism and sexism, intersect in complex and multifaceted ways within discourse. What are the core principles of intersectionality in discourse analysis? The core principles include recognizing the complexity of identities, understanding the intersecting systems of oppression, and analyzing the power dynamics and social context that influence discourse. Can you explain the matrix of domination in intersectional discourse analysis? The matrix of domination is a concept that describes the interlocking nature of social hierarchies, where race, class, gender, and other identity markers are woven together into a comprehensive structure of oppression, affecting how individuals experience society. What is meant by visibility and voice in intersectional analysis? Visibility and voice refer to how intersectionality influences who gets to speak and be heard in societal discourses. It focuses on highlighting the voices of those marginalized across multiple dimensions, enhancing understanding of diverse experiences. What methodological implications does intersectionality have for discourse analysis? Intersectionality prompts inclusive sampling to ensure diversity of voices, employs thematic analysis to discern how identities influence discourse, and uses a critical lens to examine how language constructs and challenges intersecting oppressions. How does intersectionality affect the representation of subjects in discourse? Intersectionality affects representation by showing how identities and experiences are uniquely shaped by overlapping social categorizations, leading to more accurate and comprehensive portrayals of individuals in discourse. Why is it important to consider historical and social contexts in intersectional discourse analysis? Considering historical and social contexts is crucial because it shapes and is shaped by the intersections of identities, influencing the enforcement and experience of power within discourse. How does intersectionality help in analyzing power dynamics in discourse? Intersectionality helps in analyzing power dynamics by revealing how various forms of power and oppression are not experienced uniformly but differ based on the intersections of identities, such as race, gender, and class. Can intersectionality in discourse analysis inform policymaking? Yes. Intersectionality can significantly inform policymaking by providing deeper insights into how different groups are affected by policies. This understanding can lead to more inclusive and effective policies that address the needs of the most marginalized.